Bum-ba-da-dum. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to BanjoBenClark.com, or maybe you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. I'm Banjo Ben, your teacher for banjo, mandolin, and guitar. I'm going to teach one today that's been requested for many, many years. I've taught it on guitar and mandolin already. What a Friend We Have in Jesus. We're going to learn a special version that has both the verse and chorus, whereas normally when you're playing this in a bluegrass setting, you're going to just play a solo over the verse. So a lot of times there's not breaks for choruses, and we're going to learn that again today, just straight up in the key of G. It's not too hard of an arrangement, but I think an interesting way to faithfully communicate that melody. So what we're going to do is we'll start off with kind of a song overview. I want to point a few things out to you on the iPad. Then we'll dive into learning all the licks and give you tips and tricks for how to play those the best that you can. And if you're watching somewhere else besides BanjoBenClark.com, I'd be honored to have you on board the site as a Gold Peak member. Gold Peak members get access to it's now over 900 lessons. I actually counted the other day for all three instruments. Plus you get all kinds of great discounts over at my general store. Come over there, join. Go to joinbanjoben.com to learn more. Let's jump into the song overview, then we'll learn how to pick it. All right, I've got the tab pulled up here on the iPad. I just want to point out a few things. If you do download the tab as a Gold Pick member, the first page will be the verse. Second page will be the chorus and the tag. Whenever we think about the chords for this song, there's lots of opportunities to play other chords. In fact, fun fact, this is the first song that me and my sisters, the Purple Hulls is the name of their band, this is the first song that we actually worked up together, bluegrass style. And there's an old video on YouTube. You can just go search What a Friend We Have in Jesus by the Purple Hulls, and you'll see that old video that went viral many years ago. And we actually added a couple of chords to it that we're not going to do here. We added a 2 minor, an A minor, and maybe a flat 7 here and there. But this is just going to be straight up G, C, and D, 1, 4, and 5. A couple things to keep in mind. I'll talk about it whenever we start instructing it. But many times this song travels up to that first string for the melody note. That's where it starts. What a friend we have. And so because that's kind of repetitive, what we're going to do is every time we climb up there, a couple times in the verse, a couple times in the chorus, we're going to treat it a little different. So there'll be at least 4 different ways to communicate that melody once we get there. And I think that in a song like this where you have some repetition in the melody, that it's important to offer that kind of variety just to keep it interesting and tasty. Nothing is too out of sorts as far as difficulty goes. We're going to introduce a couple of different melodic approaches. They're not hard, but look here in measure 8. That's technically just 2 forward rolls, right? But because we go up to that 5th fret, we're using some melodic principles there, and I'll explain that to you as I teach it. But if you've never played any melodic stuff before, this is a great way just to get introduced to that type of stuff. And if you want to learn more, you can go and watch my Intro to Melodics banjo lesson, and then I have tons of arrangements of melodics as we go through the site. I'll show you the other place where we're going to use something similar. Measure 24, this is in the chorus, but we do the same type of thing. So the rolls, if you just boil down the rolls, they're not hard. Forward roll, a couple strings here, a couple strings here. What makes it melodic is jumping up and grabbing that 5th fret. Another thing to call your attention to that I'll talk about as we go, but there's difference between what I call 16th note ornaments and 8th note ornaments. You see this one here with the double bar line? That's a pull-off. That means that pull-off going from 1st fret to open is going to happen in between when you pick this note and this note. So though you're only playing with your pick hand 2 different notes, to the ear, there's 3 different notes. There's the initial pick one, then the pull-off note, and then the second one that we play. Whereas if you compare it to this D lick that we have here, here's a hammer-on, but if you'll notice there's no double bar line here. So these are just regular 8th notes. And where people mess up is they try to play this hammer-on too fast. They'll try to treat it as a 16th note hammer-on, and then it'll mess up their timing for the rest of the measure. We talk about it as I teach you, but just know when you see an ornament with these 16th note bar lines, that means that they're happening twice as fast as an ornament, meaning hammer-on, pull-off, slide. That's just an 8th note, okay? All right, so with that overview, I think we're ready to jump right in. And if you're a Gold Pick member and you're watching here on the website, banjobenclark.com, don't forget you can download the tabs now. beneath this video player and the Jam Track MP3s. I have the MP3s of the actual solo that I play, and then another one without the solo so that you can practice along with it. Howdy, y'all. I want to tell you about this neat little gadget that we just got in at the general store. Banjo players love gadgets. This is called the Banjo Bend Pick Bender. It's a little piece of wood with a couple of grooves in it. And what they're used for is to accurately, let me find a pick here, accurately and carefully adjust the curvature and the bend and the fit of your picks, whether that be the band part that goes around your fingers, but most used for the actual blade. So what can happen here is you could just put your blade through the device and then bend it as needed. What I love about it is that whenever you try to bend your pick blade just by smashing on it or pushing on it with your thumb, what can often happen is that metal will crease and it will bend in one place of the blade more than the other places. So you're not getting an even bend in the curvature. That's why I'll often, whenever I'm fitting my new picks, I'll use needle nose pliers to slowly bend each little part of that blade so that it's an even curve. This puts an end to having to use pliers, and you can even do it while you're wearing it so that I can carefully adjust the angle of my finger pick blade to be just what I want. And by the way, I like to kind of mimic my finger pick blade angle to my end of my actual finger. So that same curvature that I have coming off the end of my finger is pretty much what I want to mirror with my pick blades so that you can see how that looks. These are only like $6 or so. You can go check them out at Banjo Bend's general store and make sure that you can get your picks fit accurately and not ruin them trying to bend them by hand. Let's give the verse a look-see. We're going to come in with a pretty standard bluegrass kickoff. We're keeping the melody central in this, as we've talked about, but we want to make it interesting. And many times over the course of this song, both in the verse and chorus, it climbs up to that high D note. And then it stays there. What a friend we have. And it does that 3 or 4 times throughout the song. So what we're going to do is find some different ways as we go through the song to communicate that melody once we get up to that high D string. The first way we're going to do is just pretty straightforward, starting with a hammer on and a forward roll, measure 3. Okay, we'll see some different ones as we go along, especially in the chorus. We'll get more syncopated with it. But this is pretty straightforward. Holds the melody straight out front. When we go to the C chord, I want to keep it pretty straightforward so far. We'll get more complex as we go, especially as we get into the chorus, but nothing special happening here. But I do want to just call your attention to the variety of the notes that we're using these last 2 measures, these 2 measures over the C chord. What are we having to think about? We're having to think what our melody's doing, right? Jesus. So there in measure 5, it's labeled measure 5. We've got that melody note. And then we're dropping down to this melody note in measure 6. And you'll notice that I released my ring finger off of that top first string. Why do I do that? Do you have to do that? No, but it's something that's very common to do to add some thickness to what you're doing over the C chord to keep it from sounding so redundant of just rolling through a C chord. If I don't release a ring finger, it sounds great, but we've got a lot of E notes happening, right? Both low and high. So if we release that first string, it's got a great little suspension, 9th tone there that helps thicken it up. All right, if I can play. I love that sound. But our melody's still front and center. That whole line, slowly. A little bit of a just dynamic technique. That first open D string in measure 6, I put a little bit of extra weight on that with my middle finger. Just gives it a very bluegrassy sound. I gave it a little too much that time, but it's often that open first string that creates that bluegrass sound, right? When we get into the next line, what is the melody doing? That's the melody. And we're going to introduce a very simple melodic lick in measure 8 that's going to communicate that. Measure 7 is simple. What's our melody doing there? Bum, bum, bum. That's our melody in measure 8. But we're going to get those same notes, but using a forward roll melodic lick. So I'm jumping up to that 5th fret on the 3rd string. Very simple melodic lick, but if you've never played any melodics, it's a great way to kind of get into it. Very smooth sounding, right? And then we're just playing a partial D chord in measure 9. Just our index there on the 2nd fret, ring on the 4th fret. That's all we need. That's the melody, so we're going to kind of accent it. And then we'll come back into another walk. That whole line, 2, ready, go. Again, those open first strings in measure 9, if we give those a little extra weight with our middle finger, it gets that syncopated bluegrass feel. You hear that? I love that sound. A lot of times you'll write me and say, I just can't make it sound like you. Well, it's little things like that with the dynamics that gives it that bluegrassy sound. Yes, I know that the melody's here, but we've already established that. When we get to the next line, we've got that first string melody note again. And this time we're going to do it a little bit different. Don't let the little dots trip you up. Don't worry about that. In fact, let's just remove the hammer-ons altogether. Just put your middle finger on the 3rd fret, and I want you to play this with me for measure 11. That's all. Can you play that? Now just add a quick hammer on each time you do that pinch. That's it. And I just had to write it like that to get the TEF file to sound good. And then measures 12, 13, and 14 are the same as what we saw before. Measure 15 is we've seen before. And then here I wanted to communicate the melody in 16 very straightforward. It's just my choice and not do any syncopation. The melody does this. So all that I did was sprinkle in some other notes in between those melody notes. And then we're going to walk into our chorus, which we'll cover in the next little video segment for you Gold Pick members. Bring your attention back to measure 16. A lot of your tendency is to play the melody like this and put some other notes in there, but then just be random about which notes. And a lot of times you'll create a habit of maybe always adding the first string in. So it would sound like this. That's boring. That's boring. We've got all these strings to choose from on the banjo. We're communicating our melody, so we should try to add notes in between there that differ. That's why I went back and forth between the first and the second strings. First string there, second string, back to first string. Okay, we could also do something like that. Bring in our 5th string. I didn't think it sounded as good. Now let's go into the chorus if you're watching on the site as a Gold Pick member.